House will vote today on the Inflation Reduction Act. The sweeping package includes record funding for the climate and allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices for the first time. And it comes with the midterm elections right around the corner. Democrats' once bleak outlook now looking maybe more promising.
Let's bring in Ohio's Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate. He's running against Butters. Congressman Tim Ryan joins us now. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. I'll ask you in a little bit whether your opponent has figured out whether he loves Silicon Valley or hates Silicon Valley, loves San Francisco or hates San Francisco, loves a little Silicon Valley tech vest or hates a little Silicon Valley tech vest. But first, let's talk about something very serious. Nick and I have been warning all week about the reckless language that's been thrown around by Republican members of Congress, by Republican members of the House and the Senate, by pro-Trump media outlets. And we've been warning. Mika pleaded yesterday for them to please stop and pull back on the language that was going to encourage violence. And then, of course, we saw the tragedy in your home state. I'm sure you'd like to say something about that at the beginning of this conversation, about our law enforcement officers and the risk, the added risk that they are under now because of this hate speech.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joe. You know, it's first, thank you to these law enforcement officials who showed up. FBI, State Highway Patrol, local law enforcement all did a hell of a job keeping this threat contained. But, you know, I think it's important for us to remember, like, this is Cincinnati, Ohio. These are moms and dads who are public servants who are trying to protect the rest of the country, enforce federal laws, prevent crimes, that on the weekends, like, take their kids to the Bengals game or to the Cincinnati Reds baseball game. I mean, these are human beings who are trying to do what's right. They serve the public. They serve the country. We have to support law enforcement. And that's the bottom line here. This is a country of laws. And the freedoms we have are based on the rule of law. And these are people who help enforce that. So it's ridiculous. It's not going unnoticed either. As you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of Republicans, including J.D. Vance, who haven't said a word even thanking law enforcement down in Cincinnati for what they've endured in the past couple of days. And I think that speaks volumes about where they are as far as supporting law enforcement in Ohio and around the country.
Yeah, but what's so interesting is they talk about defending the blue. They talk about defending law enforcement officers. They fly the flags. They put on the bumper stickers. And yet, if it doesn't suit their political purposes, then they remain silent or even attack law enforcement officers when they have the hell beaten out of them by American flags on January the 6th, or when we see these threats and these attacks against the FBI. Again, these are Republican members of Congress. I'd love to hear any Republican, because I sure as hell know if I were still in Congress and I were a Republican member of Congress, I would be attacking these broadsides against law enforcement. But Republican members of Congress have accused the FBI this week of being the Gestapo, of being communist, said we should defund the FBI. By the way, the group that stops terrorist attacks in the United States and protects every American, called them, our law enforcement officers, the enemy within. GOP leadership in the House talked about the FBI's outrageous abuse of power, called our law enforcement officers un-American. The senator talked about the FBI's attack on our constitutional republic. Another Republican senator accused them of being a third world Marxist dictators. And yet the silence is deafening from Republicans, not just Republicans in the House and the Senate, but like you said, even the Republican that you're running against, other Republicans out there. For the love of God, defend law enforcement. Say something, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. These guys aren't Republicans, Joe. These guys are extremists. And I've been talking about this for the last, year and a half now. This is about the exhausted majority of us, Democrats, Republicans, independents, who have to confront the extremists in this country. And if we don't do that, we are going to, see continue to see more and more of what we've seen. This is un-American behavior, trying to undermine the rule of law, to try to undermine law enforcement. Like, look, we could have conversations about all of this, but you got to have law enforcement. You got to back these people who are keeping us all safe. This was a terrorist act, and we need to call it such. It was a terrorist act in Cincinnati, Ohio, of a radical person who tried to kill FBI agents. Now, that is not how we want to leave this country to our kids and to our grandkids. That's un-American. Rule of law, freedom, this is what they're trying to protect. They're keeping us safe. They've done a hell of a job, and these are moms and dads, and we need to stand by them. Period, end of story. There's no conversation around that.
All right, let's have a conversation about the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you think this will change the lives of not just your constituents, but all Americans?
Well, this is a very, very good package. I mean, it has deficit reduction in there, and we have to acknowledge that we've been spending more than we're taking in, and we've got to start, paying down the national debt, and that starts with reducing our annual deficits. This bill does that. Seniors are getting hammered, my mom included, could pay $1,000 a month out of pocket in the Medicare program. This caps that at $2,000 out of pocket that a senior would have to spend on their prescription drugs. And it also allows us to actually finally, after all these years we've been talking about it, negotiate down the drug prices. That means more money in people's pockets. And what I like best about this is it positions us to rebuild the great American middle class. It puts Ohio and America as the arsenal of energy. We had the arsenal of democracy. We need to be the arsenal of energy. We see what's going on in Ukraine with Putin and China and all of this stuff. We have got to be the source of energy for the world, and this allows us to bridge through natural gas, which is going to create, thousands and thousands of jobs in places like Ohio, help us continue to reduce carbon around the world, hopefully, reduce prices for American citizens, and then you take Ohio, for example, like this bill should say made in Ohio, because when you look at the history of Ohio, we did steel in Youngstown and Cleveland. We did rubber in Akron. We did glass in Toledo, aerospace around the country or around the state. Now we're talking about building electric vehicles in places like Lordstown, Ohio, electric trucks in Lordstown, Ohio, batteries all over the state, solar panels in Toledo, natural gas in the eastern and southern part of the state, new versions of aerospace, new ways of using coal waste in places like Southeast Ohio. This is an amazing opportunity for us to rebuild the middle class and dominate these industries of the future. And this is a lifeline. You add the CHIPS bill, which is going to bring back semiconductor manufacturing. You talk about the infrastructure bill, which is going to create 600,000 jobs in Ohio, good union construction jobs. Intel's coming to Ohio. Like, we are very well positioned in Ohio, but this is about the industrial Midwest and the United States outcompeting China in the industries of the future. And this is a down payment on us doing that.
Ohio's Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, Congressman Tim Ryan, thank you very much for being on this morning.